Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, the ups and downs and how to navigate life with kids on your own while keeping sane. Covering subjects such as domestic violence through to fussy eaters and solo dating. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome.
So today I have David James joining me, the founder of Juggle Street. After several successful years in the US as a serial entrepreneur, David returned to Australia, a proud parent of 4 children, and soon discovered that he and his wife needed help juggling daycare, school runs, and everything else, while establishing a new startup and continuing their careers. Ever the innovator, David founded Juggle Street, a social network where busy working parents put their neighbours to work. David and Juggle Street team are passionate about rebuilding a sense of community and friendship in our neighbourhoods. And this network creates trust and cooperation between families and neighbours of all ages. David's goal is to connect 1 million people of all ages, street by street across Australia, creating a trust-based network that invigorates social communities. Hi, David. It's a real pleasure to be talking to you today. Thanks for coming and speaking to me today. So look, I've used Juggle Street over the last few years and I found it a great tool, for enabling me to find local people to help me, as I don't have a support network, being a single mum and not having any family in the area that I live in. Can you give me like a brief overview and how you got to the point of creating Juggle Street?
Yeah, Juggle Street's my 5th startup, and I'd come back from the US, and my 4th startup was still going. And I was getting re-established here and got remarried, and I suppose the second lot of children, that's part of the story. And I started a different startup here, which I was exiting. And during that time, young children were growing up, and we were trying to find babysitters in the neighbourhood, and it was far more difficult than I remembered the first time round. And then my older girls were getting into this sort of trying to get onto the bottom rung of the, get some independence and some pocket money, and, babysitting's a go-to thing for that. And they were having difficulty. Anyway, so that was sort of playing in the back of my mind. And then I started investigating a startup around childcare centres, because my children were in childcare. And we started separate to outside of that, we were teaching them Mandarin, and found this little Mandarin school. And not surprising, in Australia you can find Latin and French and German, but you can't find Mandarin. But and then this little school went bust, and I thought there was a big opportunity in Australia to get with the childcare and put Mandarin across the existing infrastructure, and went to Singapore and looked at where countries do it really well, where it's mandatory. And sort of immersion, and I really got into the brain development of children and the time to do it for languages. When you just acquire languages rather than learning it, it's literally from sort of 6 weeks old to about 4 years old.
Definitely not mine and your age. It's a bit.
No, that's right.
It's a bit full on.
Yeah, our synapses are all old and crinkly now. But that's really where I got involved in the childcare, and I was looking at the operational aspects behind the childcare centres, and it just kept coming up that the biggest problem that anyone had, and I'm always sort of chasing pain points. There's no sense building technology and then look for a solution to fix. You've got to do it the other way. What's the problem and can you fix it? And the biggest problem that childcare seem to have by far is staffing, people not turning up, cancelling last minute. And then the poor childcare directors have to sort of scurry around. And so that's where the idea of a neighbourhood based, and then a lot of them use sort of old-fashioned telephone-based agencies, and, where we live, and then, they send someone from 3 hours away and it's too late. So that whole idea of using the neighbourhood to get people in to fix these problems. But then the more I looked into the operation of daycare centre, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy around it. I mean, if you remember back in the day, we had there's the early years learning framework, which I'm sure you're familiar with when your kids were younger, and that's all the childcare. And that used to be an 800-page document.
Oh my gosh!
I know, but then we had I think it was the Gillard government, the education revolution.
Yeah.
And in true bureaucratic Australian style, we managed to revolutionise it from an 800-page document to a 3,500-page document.
Yeah, I can imagine. Look, and I suppose with daycare centres, it's got to be safe and it's got to be secure. But I know what you mean.
So that was enough to put me off, because I know in a startup environment, you've got to be agile, you've got to be able to pivot, and you've got to, and worrying about the regulations, which are necessary, but you didn't. So I decided I was convinced there was a supply and demand in the neighbourhood, and I kept coming back to this, to the babysitting dilemma that parents with young children like Fiona and I, and then my older girls were. I think there was a natural marketplace, and that's where the idea came from. And Juggle Street was a name that seemed to resonate with most parents, and we didn't want it. Right at the beginning, we wanted to create an umbrella brand so we could address multiple pain points for parents as their children got older, all the way from childcare to primary to high school. And we started off very simply, and the CTO that was working with me at my startup here in Australia, the other one, he became free, and we got the band back together, so to speak, and we created this mobile-based proximity, neighbourhood focused two-sided marketplace. And parents set up a profile, they help us set up a profile, and we launched it at the primary school, which is a walking distance from my house, where the kids are still there now. And that's where it came from. And we had the technology, and you can see on the map, the pins on the map, the parents, I think we started off with 12 pins on the map. I think there was like eight babysitters and 4 parents. And it grew from there. But I realised that it was a defining moment. We've been going a few weeks, and a few more pins started appearing on the map, which is new babysitters joining. And I could see one on our technology was saying it was 15 metres away. So I got onto ARM and I said, this must be broken. It's got to be 150 metres or 1.5 kilometres or something. And it wasn't. It was actually the semis across the way, a little apartment block across the way, and there was a 19-year-old girl in there. Yeah. I had no idea she was there. So she was an ideal babysitter.
Definitely.
And just literally across the street. She was the girl next door. And so I thought there is a supply and demand, and the problem is that the supply and demand, because everyone's so busy and parents are commuting, and the two sides of the market, they're just not meeting anymore. No. And you can sort of the explanation over the last 30, 40 years, people work more, mobile technologies gets more and more invasive, and it's people are busier and busier, and also then on the supply side, they're all staying in their houses more. They're not playing at the parks. Parents aren't networking in the playground because they're going shooting off to work. So that's where for the first 2 years, we literally went school by school, building up the trust with the parents. And marketplaces are common, across the world. And years ago, people would say, "Oh, I never do banking online," and now everyone does. And and never. So, but we chose the highest level of trust of all the marketplaces, which is why most people have shied away from it. Parents and their children. So I knew instinctively from the beginning that we had to establish the trust, and the only way to do that is to eyeball the parent, shake their hands and explain what you're doing. So we did. We went. I'm on the P&C at the local school, and I know that they need fundraising, So we approached schools and said, "Can we sponsor your sausage sizzle or the car boot sale of the fate?" And they said, "Sure." And then we would go along, sometimes literally with a juggler, and
okay.
the juggler would entertain the kids, and then we give us a chance to speak to the parents. So we had groups of people going to literally school by school across our area of Sydney. And then I remember it took us nearly 2 years to get 10,000 users signed up.
Yeah.
And it was still free for both sides of the network at that stage.
Yeah. I think I was one of those people. I think I used it then. Yeah.
And then it was just another 7 months after that to get the second 10,000. So to go from 10,000 to 20,000. So it's never been a hockey stick curve growth, but it started picking up momentum. And then we could start going across the whole of Sydney, and then we moved down to Melbourne, and then we started rolling out.
Yeah, look, I find it fantastic because it was nice to be able to, like you say, understand who's on your doorstep, who's local, that you could then use. And like when I was working full time, it was vital. And being online was also awesome because I could be sitting on a train or something like that, and I could be then perusing the app and actually sort of posting what I needed on the way to work or whatever, or on the way home from work. So,
and I also wanted to make it a real marketplace. So, and Juggle Street, which is one of the reasons we've been able to expand quicker. So parents and basically tap into the supply and demand. So rather than a platform saying it's $25 an hour or it's $35 an hour, and that's very restricting because, parents and especially single parents, with a single income, what they can afford isn't what someone else can afford. And, everybody's circumstance is different. So Juggle Street was built from the ground up with that concept in mind. So when as a user, but people haven't used it who are listening, the parents set the price of the job. So they can.
Well, that was what I was about to ask. Are the jobs like on there? So it's a little bit like a Odesk or something like that, or a Fiverr, where you can go in and say, okay, I will pay $20 or whatever an hour for babysitting, etc.
Yeah, and we didn't want to overcomplicate it and make it a bit of an auction. So the parents are in charge of the job and they can set the price. So let's take a simple babysitting job. We've now got more complicated jobs, before and after school care and nannying and au pairs. But like a simple babysitting job, you might send that out. Typically, parents will send that out to between 5 and 10 people. They set the price of the job, but you set it at $12 an hour and you send it out. And then it's real time. So helpers can either apply or they can decline. And if they decline, they have to say why. So they get a couple of options, like too short notice, a calendar clash, I'm already doing something.
Okay.
Or it's the price is too low. So as a parent, if you send it out to 10 people and 8 of them come back straight away and say your price is too low, then you've got instant market feedback. So we didn't want to get into these individual negotiations on the job. It's just like the market will tell you, what it's worth. And one of my daughter at university, in 1 week, she had a job for $15 an hour, $20 an hour, and $25 an hour. And again, because it's around the corner, and it's on it's a midweek, and she's got a uni assignment, and the children are only going to be up for the first hour, then she'll do it for a cheaper price. So just letting supply and demand take charge.
It's a supply and demand is the basics, isn't it? That's the thing. So no, I agree completely. So can the babysitters or nannies, etc., can they post that they're available? How does that actually work?
No, again, we did a lot of research, and the old-fashioned way was to, the helpers, they would have an availability calendar, and then you would set their calendar, and then parents would, if they saw something they liked, then they go and check. But what we found in reality is nobody keeps the calendars up to date.
No, we've got so many calendars, I suppose, that we're juggling. Quite literally. I suppose, keeping everyone up to date. And there might be last minute things as well that.
Well, there are, and it's like we also we wanted to make it this real time, whether it's last minute or not, but it's a real time. Like it's like a little contract. They get an SMS, the helpers, and you say, well, this is the job. Here's my profile. Here are my this is these are the description of the job. It's on this date at this time. For this amount of money. Now, you're either interested or you're not.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So if you apply, you're saying you're available. So we're not relying or having an excuse in availability calendar or, and typically what people would do that, they'd say, hey, I'm available on Thursday, Friday and Sundays. And then you pick a Friday and they go, oh, not that one. it's my boyfriend's birthday or something.
Yeah, no, fair one.
And that principle is, those principles haven't changed. It is a marketplace. Parents still set the price. It's real time, and that's allowed us to grow into multiple geographies and different socio-economic areas. When we expanded to New Zealand,
I know, I was about to say that. Yeah, that's just unbelievable. Yeah,
and that's allowed us to do that as well because the market determines the price.
No, which is awesome. So Juggle Street covers the whole of Australia and New Zealand?
Yes. Yep. We're now up to about 108,000 registered users across New Zealand and Australia, and that's about 90,000 in Australia. And the split between parents and helpers, when we started with the pins on the map, it was like 95% helpers and 5% parents. And that has gradually changed. And now it's actually gone over 50%. So we're running at about 56% parents now.
Okay.
So, which is nice. And it's heading towards 55 towards 60. And that's good because we've always had more of a supply than we have parents with a demand for jobs. When we started, we thought we'd have to market equally to parents and to helpers, but we learned very quickly, well, two important lessons. The good lesson was the helpers, the workers, loved it, and they found us. They like the real-time nature. It's a contract, it's a job, and they can build up their ratings and reviews and their reputations. And that's always, so we didn't have to market, and we still don't, unless we go into opening up a new area. We don't market to the helpers at all. But we learned that the parents was going to take longer to build the trust.
Well, I suppose you're trusting somebody to look after your child, and and you've got to establish that reputation yourself, haven't you? So no, that's fair enough. They've got to trust you.
Yeah. So now we're getting we've got more parents, and then something else we learned after a while, because originally we didn't. Single parents wasn't really on our radar, and nor were dads. And then we started noticing more dads, and found out because of the support chat and things like that, there was single dads, and there was a lot more single moms using the platform. And again, if in the scale of juggling, then single parents are at the right at the high end. Of the scale.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, and also, I mean, if you move, especially I've found in Australia, if you move state and you've got family in Queensland, but you move to, say, Melbourne or WA or New South Wales even, then you haven't got people, that support network on your doorstep to assist and help you out. So you do sort of need that village around you.
Yeah, and we found that there was a lot of people that were from overseas or interstate that, they're plonked in the middle of a big city, and it can feel very lonely, and you haven't got that network around you.
Yeah.
And the dads now, I think the last count, they're up to about 15% of our new parent registrations are dads. And they're posting nearly a quarter, they're posting nearly 25% of the jobs.
Well, like single mums, single dads, we've all got to work. And, I think the single mums, it's accepted that we're there for our children and we need to go home when they're ill or various different things like that. But single dads have challenges as well in the fact that if they're looking after their children 50% of the time or full time, they have the same challenges as single mums. So, and they still need the same care aspects as single mums do. So, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all, David. No, not at all. So how do, if I was a single parent and I was on the website, how do I then, what information do I get on the actual helpers to help me to choose which one would be right for my family?
Yeah, so in terms of verification, we verify working with children checks, but they don't exist in New Zealand.
Okay.
If you're not an Australian resident, you're required to put in your passport details, and then we verify whether you've got a right to work, whether you have a visa, and whether you've got a right. So it's called a right to work check. And then a helper's profile can't be published. It's not published, not seen by a parent until we verify. Well, We do mobile phone verification, email verification, and then working with children check and a right to work visa check. And then the helper has to load a photograph, and they have the option of doing a video. And then they can describe what they can describe themselves, and then they put their experience in each of the job categories that they select to opt into. And then it's the trust, which is why it takes longer. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. Like as parents, we're drawn to the ones with the most who've done the most jobs. And but when you start, there's no one done any jobs, so it's taken that time to. But now we've got so many. We've got like 50,000 helpers on there, and some of them have got. So we've built up an algorithm internally which presents helpers in the various categories based on this what we call a trust algorithm. So that's based on the number of jobs that someone's done, the number of cancelled jobs and number of jobs they've cancelled, because that's a measure of reliability. And then the next factor is the number of written reviews from parents, then their 5-star rating. And then we multiply that by a proximity weighting. So closer to your house. So if someone's 500 metres away, they'd get more points than someone who was 5 kilometres away. And then in a real-time basis, when you log in and you go searching for a nanny or a daycare, whatever you go searching for, the platform will present those in that order.
Those in the closest area with that criteria that you just described.
Well, it's in the back end. It's an algorithm, but it's a point system. So all those things have points, and then the proximity thing is a weighting on top of it, which basically gives an overall ranking and point system, and then that's the order they're presented.
Okay, awesome.
But then as the parent, we've got a whole list of filters that you can go to as well. So if you want French, there's the language filters, there's special needs, car, driver's license, qualifications, first aid. So the system uses overall trust parameters to present to you. Because we don't know what your particular requirements are. So we use a trust algorithm, and then you can, on top of that, you can change the filters and drill down further, because I need someone with special needs experience. I want someone with a first aid certificate, or someone with anaphylaxis training. So it's really quite sophisticated in as time's gone by, we've added more. But that's one of the challenges from a technology point. You have these great ideas and parents say, I want this. And then it's like, yeah, okay, that's great. Now we've got to go back to 50,000 helpers and get them to give us the information before we can. And that's, one of our rules. Well, I'm a bit obsessive about it. It's, when you big databases and marketplaces, garbage in, garbage out. So you've got to get the right information in, and then you can present it and slice it and dice it and use filters.
Yeah, no, exactly. And algorithms work with that, like clean data, but like you say, with garbage data, it can throw out everything. So that's not effective for your customers as such. So the parents can actually rate the helpers. What have you had any incidents where a parent's like not been happy, and how do you go about like dealing with a situation if you're not happy with a helper?
Yeah, we've been live for over 6 years now, and maybe we've had 8 incidents where people have had cause to contact us.
That's good.
And there's been over 30,000 jobs posted, but of that 8, 6 of them were complaints against the parent.
Okay.
And not being in a fit state when the babysitter arrives, and and saying they'll pay them, and then they don't pay them and refuse to pay, and it goes
both ways basically. So the parent can complain about the helper, but the helper can also complain about the parent and speak to you about that as well. It's not as though the helper's just on their own and they deal with whatever situation and scenario there is there. There's a little bit of protection for them.
Well, I mean, they can come back to us and we'll do it when we can. But obviously we encourage them to sort it. We're not we're not that. And there is a slight distinction. I mean, a parent can leave a written review and a 5-star rating, which is in 5 categories, which adds up to the normal rating system. On the other side, we allow the helpers to rate the parent like the 5-star rating, but we don't allow them to leave a written review. No,
that's fair. Yeah, okay.
We just thought, because there's some younger, less experienced people on there, we didn't want things written that would possibly be defamatory, and anyway, over the years, I think that decision has proved out well. 99.9% of the parent reviews are honest.
No, so what? So you've got babysitters on there, and you've got nannies on there. What other facilities does the website actually offer, or services? Should I say, not facilities?
Yeah,
services.
Au pairs, which is quite distinctly different. And which obviously has now been thrown into complete turmoil with, because 90% of the au pairs were coming from overseas, and all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And then last year we went into into tutoring. Okay. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, this umbrella brand. So, as the kids get older, you don't need them babysat, but you might, it's like, well, I could do, my child could do with some French or some Mandarin, or help in primary school even with some maths. And so interesting, just before COVID, and that was our next big job vertical was tutoring, and we divided that into primary school and high school. And under the Juggle Street model, it's proximity based. So someone, and again, from maximizing maximizing our helpers already on the network, someone who's a good babysitter could also be a great tutor. They're not a trained teacher, but if a mom is looking for someone in year 5 or 4 to get some help with maths, and they take, and there's somebody around the corner who's done 72 jobs in the neighbourhood. They've finished their HSC, and with your children, it's more of at the primary school, it's more of a chemistry that they do they've got the skills. If they've done HSC maths, they know the maths at the year 4 or 5. Do they?
Yeah, and Australia is a multicultural country anyway. So I mean, we've got Italian and French and German and Spanish and Chinese and Japanese, and so if their native language is not English, then they might be an awesome tutor at teaching like Spanish, or at teaching Chinese or Mandarin, or Japanese.
And again, and all the musical instruments as well, especially in primary school. So we launched actually about 3 or 4 months before, and we got a lot of tutors signed up. A lot of them were existing people doing childcare, and then they said, well, I can do tutor, and then we started signing up qualified teachers and trained tutors, and then COVID happened. So then all of a sudden our model of, creating a marketplace where people went into someone's homes, all of a sudden you weren't allowed to go into people's homes. So not only, but that sort of stopped our tutoring expansion in its tracks. Since then we've launched the option for online tutoring. But that was a big, our expansion of jobs was going along quite nicely. Everything was building, and then we're not, like thousands, millions of other businesses.
It feels like everything's been put on pause for a year, and just so we've all had time to take stock, and now we're all going to hurtle out of the gates, heading forward to 2021 with all our ideas. Which leads me quite nicely into what's next? So you've got the platform up. It's it's all around Australia and in New Zealand. So what's next? Are you developing anything, or can we even know about it? I don't know. This is all secret squirrel stuff.
No. It's we've had to regroup. I mean, and we lost 90% of our revenue, and we have managed to survive, and we've come out the other side. And in the meantime, we introduced online tutoring and stuff like that. But we've got a couple of challenges still now. And I think, my personal opinion, and all of a sudden online tutoring became the flavour. Everyone was doing Zoom. Well, you and I are doing Zoom now. Yeah. But But I think the pendulum is swinging back very quickly to face-to-face. I mean, the last thing I want for my 9-year-old boy is a Zoom meeting.
Well, I know, to be on a blooming computer again. Like, it's bad enough on the games and like all the other things.
Yeah. So we're focusing now on trying to establish ourselves in the tutoring market, especially, and we're focusing on primary school. You can do high school tutoring as well. Well, one, that's more competitive. There's a lot of startups and big companies now in the high school. But our user base and our parents and in that primary space, so we're concentrating on that. We're about to re-release our au pair job offering because I think there's a massive demand at the moment and a real need. Yeah. But we found our automated matching thing when it comes to au pairs isn't quite cutting the mustard. So we're going to sort of help curate that process a little bit, and we're now doing screening telephone interviews and some other things which again the parents are telling us that what they need, so we go back and rebuilding that. And from a technology point of view, we've got and you as a user, you see it on your phone, but that's not an app, it's actually it's a website, it's a mobile website. So we're in the next 3 or 4 months, hopefully we'll be in a position to launch iOS and Android apps as well, which again the market has been telling us, both the parents and the helpers, that's what they want. But again, when you're a startup and you're iterating and you're changing things every day, or at least 2 or 3 times a week, we'd be doing new feature patches and bug fixes and things like that. And when you have to still go through the Apple, Android isn't too bad, but you go to the App Store, you can wait six weeks and by the time you get a release, you
need to update it or whatever.
you've got 4 more in the queue behind. But I think we're not going to be adding any new big job verticals. So I think we're comfortable with getting to the stage where we'll be able to manage that process in an app environment as well.
Okay, awesome. So where can our listeners connect if they want any more questions, if they've got any more questions regarding Juggle Street, or they want to ask you anything, David? Where can they actually connect with you guys?
If anyone's got any questions, they as a user, you can just click the help thing, the icon on the bottom of the screen on your mobile phone or the PC. If you want to ask me any questions directly, it's just david@jugglestreet.com.
Awesome. And the web address for the actual site is www.jugglestreet.com.
In Australia, it's jugglestreet.com.au, and in New Zealand, it's .co.nz.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. Awesome. And then people can just go on there, and it's fairly straightforward. If you want to join as a parent, there's you just click on the join as a parent, and if you want to join as a helper, you click on that link and go through that. Awesome.
Yeah, and it's free. It's free to join, but then if you want to actually post a job, and again, that's where we've tried to keep it simple. We've had different iterations, probably half a dozen iterations of our pricing model, but parents can pay for an individual job, or they can have an annual subscription and post as many as they want. Because again, we found there was a bit of a backlash against subscriptions. People have been caught out because they forget to cancel them. And anyway, there's some people that, so we allow for both. If you want to just come in and pay for something as a one-off, you can do that.
I suppose it depends on how many times you want to post for a babysitting job, or it depends. Yeah. No, I suppose you've got to assess that bit.
Yeah. And we started last year, we started charging the helpers as well. So it was, until last year, it was completely free for the helpers. Mm-hmm. And now it's, for them, it's $24 a year. It's just $2 a month. And the big advantage they have on our platform versus Airtasker or something like that, we don't take a percentage of the job. So when a parent pays a helper, $20 an hour for $500, that $100 goes to the helper. We don't take a percentage.
And do they pay via the platform?
No. I mean, when you post a job as a parent, you say, well, I want to pay cash for this, or I want to do it online, or I don't mind. And then depending on your selection, then we only show you helpers So if you say, I want to pay online, then we only show you helpers that have opted in to be paid online.
Okay.
And then when you award the job to a helper, at that point you get their telephone number, and you would be released their bank details, and then you do the EFT.
Okay.
We could have done it through the platform, but all the merchants, the online merchant platforms, and they take such big percentages. And then, we'd have to cover that percentage, and then it sort of clouds the fact that, and we wouldn't be making any money out of it. We had to, so we decided parents are doing it anyway. Here's the bank details, they can send it, and then no one's paying an unnecessary percentage to an outside party.
Well, that way it impacts everyone, doesn't it? If you've got to put them through the merchants. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fair enough. That's okay. That's fine. And I understand you're going to do a small deal for our listeners with regard to if they log on and use the site and have listened to this podcast.
Yes. It's called a join code, but when you go as a new user, if you go in and register as a parent, there'll be a join code there for you to, and you chose the code crazy, which is
everyone.
Applicable. So just type in crazy, and then you will get $20 in your account to use as you see fit. And $20 is the cost of a one-off babysitting job. But if you wanted to get an annual babysitting subscription, it's $60. When you come to the checkout, the $20 will be applied against that. So the $20 you can, but it's enough if you want to come in and do one babysitting job and test it out. And also I can give you a URL, which if anybody gets in contact with you, you can just send them the link. And then if they join, when they click on that, it automatically puts the code in, so they don't even have to remember crazy.
Oh, brilliant. I'll post the link when I actually post the podcast on YouTube. That's fine. It's okay. Thanks, David. That's brilliant. And I have one last question for you, David. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Not to get old.
Well, I have to agree with you, that one. Yeah.
Outside of that, I'd love to be able to breathe underwater. I ocean swim at least 5 times a week, early in the morning, and which at the moment is a bit scary because the time we're going is pitch black. But hopefully, daylight saving this weekend will get some daylight back at 5:45 in the morning. But being able to, and sometimes the dolphins have been coming up next to us in the mornings and stuff. Like being able to swim underneath, underwater with them.
Well, that would be awesome. And I'm glad they're dolphins that are coming up to swim next door to you, and not anything else that's big and got sharp, pointy teeth.
That's right.
No, that's cool. All right. Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thanks ever so much. And
thank you, Claire. I love your work, by the way, and I think it's amazing at how much you get through, and it's a great service for all the single parents out there.
Thanks, David. Thank you. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you'd like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family on all the usual social media platforms that you're normally on. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content that I know you're going to want to hear, like this. If you want to check out past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. Have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one's perfect, and we're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.